All right, Empty is a uh, northeastern Spain-based black metal band that's been around since the mid '90s, mostly led by a fellow named Drizzt. Um, and they put out 6 albums so far. Omnia Amet Lorem is the sixth one. Um, all right, where to start with this? So this band they put out their first demo in the early 2000s, and it was already an especially fine recording. They weren't in the symphonic black metal camp, but they had a little tinge of that in there. They were a little bit neoclassical without being campy, and it was all up to a very fine standard. It had riffs, it had very well recorded render, it was all very well thought out. They had immediate vibe that was ready to go, and their first full length really reflected and enhanced that into a really like an exceptional debut. I think that there are still waves of that debut that have lasted throughout everything they've done, but they really leaned into their sort of these were already very fine musicians to start. They appeared accomplished and intelligent from every note of those first several records, but they did eventually both lean into the more depressive and not quite gothic realm of things with it, but also tried to push out something more reflective of their early second wave influences with harsher and more aggressive guitar work, which we find on more so their third and fourth record, but usually in pretty good distance with more atmospheric workings. So they've always had a unique sound. It was hard to define. They're a very well known underground black metal band that doesn't quite get as much due. I never really did, uh, for a lot of different reasons. And I didn't discover them until the 2009 record, which maybe it had like a King Diamond looking cover, and it was sort of a chaotic, sort of mayhem esque sound that was kind of nuts at the time. I thought it was cool, and it was one of those gems you pick up, and nobody really notices it, but it was a cool thing to latch on to at the time. And they ended up signing to Osmos. They put out 2 records that were pretty well received, and I'd written about Vasio uh, at the time of release, being very impressed. I didn't really get into the review; it was a very short, just here's a thing that came out sort of review. But at that point, they had sort of changed perspective. They 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 never became a doom band so much as the depressive side of the band and that sophisticated side of the band incorporated into a different touch of black metal that was I don't want to say less rooted in the sound of the second wave, but that's kind of what I mean. And what I'm trying to convey is that their step from that previous album to this one makes a lot of sense. This is much more atmospheric. Um, Definitely grand in its construction. It features different musicians in general, and that it's really affected the rhythmic signature of the band in a very profound way, where um, the sort of drummer and bassist involved have uh, really been able to let loose with you know a bit more fine ideas, which are, of course, this is not as brutal of an album as any of their past ones, but it is a more nuanced and detailed one, which builds unique atmosphere throughout. And I think it'd be easy to see a band with 6 albums and say, well, this is just that thing they do, and just a better version of it. Actually, it's that thing they do, but it's a very well considered evolution of it, and each you'll find that in each release they have changed quite a bit. Even though you will find the early soul of the band and the spirit of it in this record in particular. So it's not that they're looking back in time, but that the original, they're accomplishing more with that original impetus of the band with different people working at it. And I think it's especially fine work. Separate from the history of the band, I think it's just especially captivating. The again, the atmosphere is very strong, and the ratio of like clean guitar work with the more heavier parts is pretty profound. And I had a lot to say about in the review, but um, it, it is a record that I overlooked in November simply because I don't think I got it until the last week. And I wanted to touch upon it because it is, maybe it doesn't look like it's your thing, but there's not only a really interesting tradition behind this band and a lot of great releases, but it's the sort of thing that it's better enjoyed by yourself. It's better enjoyed with deep consideration for the lyrics and just enjoying the unique atmosphere the band creates. I think they call it negative pessimistic black metal, and that'll ring true. But there's a real philosophy behind it that is has a lot of conviction put into the lyrics and the meaning behind this record. So I couldn't help but enjoy it and recommend it. So again, more detail in the review. Go check that out if it sounds like your kind of black metal.